Effective manifestation through visualization requires understanding several key principles. Imagine standing at the threshold between two worlds, the physical reality you can touch and a vast inner landscape of untapped potential. What if the key to transforming your life isn't found in changing your external circumstances, but in awakening the dormant power of your sacred imagination? The mind's eye, referred to throughout history as the third eye, inner vision, or sacred imagination, is not merely a faculty for daydreaming, but a spiritual gateway that allows us to access higher realms of consciousness and reshape our very reality. This ancient wisdom, found across cultures and spiritual traditions, recognizes that within each human being lies an extraordinary capacity to perceive beyond the physical senses and create through the power of focused visualization. In the journey ahead, you'll discover how to distinguish between ordinary fantasy and sacred imagination, learn practical techniques to strengthen your visualization abilities, and understand how your internal imagery directly influences your external experience. Whether you're seeking spiritual growth, creative inspiration, or transformative change, this audiobook will guide you through activating and harnessing your mind's eye to create a life aligned with your highest potential. Chapter 1. The Sacred Gateway. A neuroscientist once conducted an experiment where participants were asked to imagine biting into a lemon while their brain activity was monitored. Remarkably, the same neural pathways activated as if they were actually tasting the citrus. This wasn't just imagination. It was the mind's eye creating a genuine physiological response. The sacred imagination operates on this same principle, but at a far deeper level. Unlike ordinary fantasy, which often serves as escapism from reality, sacred imagination serves as a bridge to higher reality. It's the faculty through which mystics have received visions, prophets have glimpsed divine truth, and ordinary individuals have accessed extraordinary wisdom throughout human history. Sacred imagination differs fundamentally from mere daydreaming or wishful thinking. When you're engaging your mind's eye in its sacred function, you're not creating fictional scenarios to avoid responsibility or reality. Instead, you're tapping into what spiritual traditions call the realm of divine ideas, the creative matrix from which all physical manifestation emerges. This distinction becomes clear when you understand that sacred imagination always calls you toward greater truth, responsibility, and alignment with divine purpose. It doesn't encourage you to retreat from the world, but equips you to engage it more powerfully. When Moses envisioned the burning bush, or when mystics throughout history have received divine visions, they weren't escaping reality. They were accessing a deeper layer of reality that informed and transformed their earthly experience. The physiological aspects of the mind's eye center around what neuroscience calls the default mode network, brain regions that become active during introspection and visualization. When you engage in sacred imagination, you're literally rewiring your neural pathways, creating new connections that support higher consciousness and spiritual perception. Metaphysically, the mind's eye functions as both receiver and transmitter. As a receiver, it allows you to perceive spiritual information, divine guidance, and higher wisdom. As a transmitter, it broadcasts your focused intentions and visualizations into the creative field, setting in motion the forces that manifest your inner vision as outer reality. You can recognize when you're accessing true, sacred imagination by several hallmarks. First, there's a quality of peace and clarity that accompanies authentic spiritual vision, unlike the agitation or confusion that often accompanies fantasy or delusion. Second, sacred imagination always empowers you with wisdom, courage, or love. It never diminishes your capacity for responsibility or right action. Finally, true sacred imagination produces fruit in your life over time, manifesting as increased spiritual sensitivity, improved circumstances, or enhanced ability to serve others. Chapter 2. Mind over Matter. Dr. Joseph Murphy once wrote about a patient who was scheduled for surgery but spent the weeks before his operation visualizing himself completely healed. When the surgery date arrived, doctors discovered that the condition requiring operation had completely disappeared. This wasn't a miracle in the supernatural sense. It was the natural result of understanding how imagination creates reality. The principle that mind precedes matter isn't just spiritual philosophy. It's the foundation of quantum physics and consciousness research. What we consistently imagine eventually manifests as our lived experience because the mental plane constitutes the very fabric of reality itself. Your current circumstances, relationships, health, and opportunities are the external reflection of what you've been internally picturing about yourself and your world for months and years. This doesn't mean that external circumstances don't matter or that you can simply think your way out of every challenge. Rather, it means that your inner imagery serves as the template from which your outer experience is constructed. When you change the mental blueprint, you inevitably change the physical manifestation, though this process requires both understanding and patience. The scientific evidence supporting mind-matter interaction continues to grow through studies in psychoneuroimmunology, which examines how mental states affect immune function, and through research into the placebo effect, which demonstrates how belief and visualization can produce measurable physiological changes. Athletes have long understood this principle, using visualization to improve performance by mentally rehearsing perfect execution before physical practice. Imagination acts as the interface between thought and reality because it bridges the abstract and the concrete. When you think the word apple, you're dealing with an abstract concept. But when you imagine biting into a crisp, juicy apple, seeing its red skin, feeling its texture, tasting its sweetness, you've created a concrete mental experience that your nervous system registers as real. This imagined experience then influences your behavior, emotions, and even your body's physiological responses. The lag time between imagination and manifestation varies, depending on several factors. The clarity and consistency of your mental imagery, the emotional intensity with which you visualize, your underlying beliefs about what's possible, and the complexity of what you're seeking to manifest. Simple internal changes, like shifts in mood or perspective, can happen almost immediately. More complex external changes, like career transitions or relationship improvements, typically require sustained visualization over weeks or months. Understanding this timing prevents both premature disappointment and premature abandonment of your visualization practice. Like planting a seed, you must trust the process even when you can't yet see the sprouting above ground. The key is maintaining consistent, faith-filled imagination while taking inspired action in the physical world. Chapter 3. Visualization Foundations. Sarah had been told since childhood that she couldn't visualize. "I don't see pictures in my mind," she'd say whenever meditation or visualization was mentioned. Then she discovered that she'd been trying to see images like watching television in her head, when visualization actually works more like gently remembering than vividly seeing. Even those who struggle with mental imagery can systematically develop their visualization abilities through simple, progressive exercises. The mind's eye is like a muscle. With proper training, everyone can strengthen their capacity for inner vision regardless of their starting point. Begin with the most basic exercise. Remember your front door. Don't strain to see it with photographic clarity. Instead, simply recall its color, shape, and the feeling of approaching it. You're not trying to project a movie screen in your mind, but rather to access the gentle sense of knowing how something looks and feels. This is visualization, not forcing dramatic images, but cultivating subtle inner awareness. Progress to simple geometric shapes. Close your eyes and gently recall the sense of a circle. You might not see a perfect circle like a drawing, but you can access the knowing of roundness, the feeling of a continuous curved line. Practice this with squares, triangles, and other basic forms. Remember, you're developing sensitivity, not forcing dramatic visual experiences. Multisensory imagination proves far more effective than purely visual approaches. When visualizing an orange, don't just try to see it. Recall its weight in your hand, the texture of its skin, the sound of peeling it, the scent that emerges, and the burst of flavor when you bite into it. This engages multiple neural pathways and creates a richer, more powerful imaginative experience. Guided imagery serves as training wheels for developing independent visualization skills. Start with recorded meditations that walk you through detailed scenes, a peaceful beach, a mountain path, or a healing garden. Let the narrator's words carry you along without straining to create perfect images. You're building familiarity with the process of inner journeying. Common visualization blocks usually stem from unrealistic expectations or past negative experiences. Some people expect to see images as clearly as watching movies, while others have been told that imagination is frivolous or dangerous. Release these limitations by understanding that visualization is a natural human capacity. You already use it every time you remember your childhood home, plan tomorrow's outfit, or worry about potential problems. Overcome resistance by starting with positive memories rather than attempting to create new images. Recall a favorite vacation spot, a beloved pet, or a moment of great happiness. You're not creating fiction, but accessing real experiences stored in your mind. This builds confidence and demonstrates that you already possess the capacity for inner vision. Practice consistency rather than intensity. 5 minutes of gentle, relaxed visualization daily proves more beneficial than hour-long sessions of strained effort. Like learning to play an instrument, regular practice develops skill more effectively than sporadic marathon attempts. Chapter 4. The Sacred versus the Profane. A woman attended a spiritual retreat where she received what seemed like a powerful vision directing her to leave her family and join a commune. The vision felt intensely real and emotionally compelling, but when she examined it more carefully, she realized it encouraged her to abandon her responsibilities rather than fulfill them more skillfully. This experience taught her the crucial skill of discerning between authentic sacred imagination and spiritual delusion. Not all imagination is created equal, and learning to distinguish between sacred imagination, fantasy, and delusion is essential for both spiritual growth and psychological well-being. This discernment protects you from being misled by your own subconscious fears or desires, while ensuring that you can recognize and trust authentic spiritual guidance when it comes. Sacred imagination possesses several distinctive hallmarks that separate it from fantasy or delusion. First, authentic spiritual vision always empowers you with wisdom, love, or courage. It never diminishes your capacity for responsibility or right action. If an inner vision encourages you to harm yourself or others, to abandon legitimate obligations, or to act in ways that violate fundamental principles of love and wisdom, you can be certain it doesn't originate from the sacred realm. Second, true sacred imagination welcomes questioning and examination. Authentic spiritual insights grow stronger under scrutiny rather than weaker. You can test your inner visions by asking practical questions. Does this guidance align with universal principles of love and truth? Does it call me to greater responsibility or lesser responsibility? Does it produce peace and clarity in my heart, or anxiety and confusion? Sacred imagination always leads to greater integration and wholeness, never to fragmentation or delusion. Third, sacred imagination produces recognizable fruit over time. While fantasy might provide temporary emotional satisfaction, sacred imagination generates real transformation in your character, relationships, and circumstances. If your inner visions consistently fail to produce positive change in your actual life, they may be serving as escapism rather than spiritual guidance. Fantasy, while not inherently harmful, serves different purposes than sacred imagination. Fantasy can provide entertainment, creative inspiration, or temporary emotional relief. However, it becomes problematic when it substitutes for engagement with reality or when it feeds unhealthy patterns of thinking. Healthy fantasy doesn't claim to be spiritual guidance and doesn't encourage impractical or irresponsible behavior. Delusion represents the shadow side of imagination, the mind's capacity to create convincing internal experiences that have no basis in truth and may actually lead to harmful consequences. Spiritual delusion often involves grandiose visions that inflate the ego rather than humble it, or fearful images that paralyze rather than empower. Such experiences typically discourage practical action and rational thinking rather than enhancing them. Develop discernment by establishing clear criteria for evaluating your inner experiences. Create a personal framework based on principles you trust, whether drawn from scripture, philosophical wisdom, or practical ethics. When you receive what seems like spiritual guidance through your mind's eye, measure it against these established standards before acting upon it. Cultivate a community of wise counselors who can provide objective perspective on your inner experiences. Spiritual imagination, while deeply personal, benefits from the wisdom of others who can help you distinguish between authentic guidance and self-deception. True sacred imagination is humble enough to seek confirmation through prayer, meditation, and counsel from trusted sources. Chapter 5. The Contemplative Path. A monastery in the mountains of Tibet was famous for producing monks with extraordinary spiritual insight. When visitors asked about their secret practices, the abbot would simply say, "We fill our minds with truth until there's no room for falsehood." This principle captures the essence of biblical meditation. Unlike practices that empty the mind, sacred meditation fills the mind with divine promises and allows you to see yourself within God's unfolding story. Biblical meditation fundamentally differs from Eastern approaches that seek to empty consciousness or transcend thought. Instead, sacred meditation engages the imagination constructively, filling it with divine truth and allowing spiritual realities to take vivid form in your inner vision. This approach activates faith through visualization, transforming abstract spiritual concepts into personal, lived experience. The Hebrew word Haggah, used in Joshua 1 verse 8 and Psalm 1 verse 2 to describe meditation, literally means to visualize, picture, or imagine the truths of Scripture. When ancient believers meditated on God's law, they weren't merely reading words or thinking abstract thoughts. They were using their imagination to picture themselves walking in obedience, to visualize God's past faithfulness, and to see divine promises fulfilled in their own lives. This type of meditation transforms abstract truths into personal reality by engaging both mind and heart. When you read that God supplies all your needs, you can move beyond intellectual assent by visualizing yourself surrounded by divine provision, seeing specific needs being met, and feeling the peace that comes from knowing you're cared for by an infinite source of supply. Create sacred inner spaces for divine encounter by developing consistent visualization practices around spiritual themes. Begin by imagining yourself in peaceful natural settings. A garden where you can walk with divine presence. A mountaintop where you can gain perspective on your life's challenges. Or a quiet room where you can sit in contemplation and receive guidance. Transform scriptural promises into personal visual experiences. If you're working with the promise that all things work together for good, don't just repeat the words. Imagine seeing your current challenges transformed into unexpected blessings. Visualize the threads of your life being woven together by divine wisdom into a pattern more beautiful than you could have designed yourself. Use guided imagery to enter biblical scenes and learn from spiritual examples. Imagine yourself present when Moses received the 10 Commandments, feeling the awe and reverence of that moment. Picture yourself among the disciples as Jesus teaches, receiving his words personally and directly. These aren't exercises in historical recreation, but opportunities to internalize timeless spiritual principles through vivid inner experience. Develop regular practices that combine scripture reading with visualization. After reading a passage, close your eyes and allow the words to form images in your mind's eye. If you've read about divine love, visualize yourself surrounded by that love, feeling its warmth and acceptance. If you've read about divine guidance, picture yourself walking confidently forward, knowing that each step is directed by infinite wisdom. The goal of contemplative practice isn't to manufacture mystical experiences, but to align your imagination with divine truth, gradually transforming your default mental patterns from fear-based thinking to faith-based vision. As you consistently fill your mind's eye with sacred images, divine love, protection, provision, and purpose, these become the lens through which you perceive and respond to daily circumstances. This practice creates a feedback loop between inner vision and outer experience. As your imagination becomes increasingly aligned with spiritual truth, your actions naturally follow suit. As your actions change, your circumstances begin to reflect the higher reality you've been visualizing. The sacred imagination thus becomes both the means and the end, the tool for transformation and the transformed way of seeing that emerges from consistent practice. Chapter 6, Guarding the Gateway. A marketing executive once calculated that the average person encounters over 5,000 advertising images daily, each one designed to create specific emotional responses and behavioral patterns. When you add news broadcasts, social media feeds, casual conversations, and entertainment content, you're absorbing thousands of mental images every day that shape your imagination without your conscious awareness. Most people have never considered that their imagination has a diet, and that this diet determines the quality of their inner vision just as surely as food determines physical health. When your imagination remains passive, you become like a sponge, soaking up whatever images and emotions flow around you. The constant stream of fearful news, anxiety-provoking advertisements, and crisis-focused conversations fills your mind's eye with scenarios of lack, danger, and limitation. These absorbed images then become the default material your imagination uses when projecting future possibilities, creating a self-perpetuating cycle of fear-based thinking. Your current imagination diet reveals itself in the automatic thoughts and mental pictures that arise during quiet moments. Do you spontaneously visualize positive outcomes or worst-case scenarios? When planning for the future, do uplifting possibilities or worrying contingencies dominate your mental screen? The quality of your habitual mental imagery reflects exactly what you've been feeding your imagination through your daily input choices. Fear-based imagination typically originates from three primary sources: media consumption, social conversations, and inherited mental patterns. Modern media operates on the principle that fear captures attention more effectively than peace. So news broadcasts, social platforms, and entertainment content deliberately amplify threatening scenarios to maintain audience engagement. This constant exposure trains your imagination to default toward catastrophic thinking even when no actual threat exists. Social conversations often reinforce fear-based imagery through collective worry and complaint. When friends, family, or colleagues consistently discuss problems, limitations, and negative possibilities, these conversations deposit fearful images into your mental environment. You might not actively choose to worry, but absorbing others' fearful visualizations gradually shifts your own imaginative patterns toward anxiety and limitation. Inherited mental patterns represent the deepest source of fear-based imagination, the unconscious images and beliefs passed down through family systems, cultural conditioning, and past experiences. These patterns operate below conscious awareness, automatically generating fearful scenarios based on historical programming rather than current reality. Breaking free from inherited fear patterns requires conscious effort to identify and replace these automatic mental movies. Recognizing fear-based imagination becomes easier when you understand its characteristic signatures. Fear-based imagery typically feels heavy, constricting, and disempowering. It focuses on what might go wrong rather than what could go right. It generates anxiety rather than peace, paralysis rather than inspired action. Fear-based imagination often involves detailed mental rehearsals of worst-case scenarios, creating vivid inner experiences of failure, rejection, loss, or danger. Clearing negative mental imagery requires both passive protection and active replacement. Begin by implementing what could be called imagination hygiene, conscious choices about what you allow into your mental environment. This doesn't mean living in denial about real challenges, but rather choosing to focus your imaginative attention on constructive rather than destructive possibilities. Create physical boundaries around your media consumption by establishing specific times and limits for news, social media, and entertainment content. Instead of passively absorbing whatever content algorithms serve you, consciously choose uplifting, educational, or inspiring material that feeds your imagination with positive imagery. Replace background news during meals or commutes with music, podcasts, or audiobooks that elevate rather than agitate your mental state. Establish conversational boundaries by learning to redirect fear-based discussions towards solution-focused dialogue. When others begin sharing anxious scenarios or negative predictions, you can acknowledge their concerns while steering the conversation toward positive possibilities or practical solutions. This protects your imagination from absorbing fearful imagery, while potentially helping others shift their mental focus as well. Develop active clearing techniques for removing negative imagery that has already entered your mental space. One effective method involves visualization replacement. When you notice fearful or limiting images arising in your mind, consciously replace them with their positive opposites. If you catch yourself imagining failure, immediately shift to visualizing success. If worried scenarios appear, deliberately picture peaceful outcomes instead. Another powerful clearing technique uses what could be called mental house cleaning, a daily practice of reviewing and releasing any negative imagery accumulated during the day. Before sleep, spend a few minutes acknowledging any fearful or limiting thoughts that arose, then consciously release them while filling your mind with peaceful, positive images. This prevents negative imagery from settling into your subconscious during sleep. Physical movement helps clear negative mental imagery because the body-mind connection works both ways. When fearful images create physical tension, moving your body through walking, stretching, or exercise can help discharge the mental energy attached to those images. Fresh air and natural environments particularly support this clearing process, as nature's imagery naturally displaces artificial or fearful mental content. Creating boundaries around what you allow into your mind's eye requires developing what spiritual traditions call custody of the eyes, conscious awareness of what captures your visual and mental attention. This doesn't mean becoming obsessively controlling, but rather developing the same kind of thoughtful discernment you'd use when choosing food for your body. Practice the gateway pause, a brief moment of conscious choice before consuming any media or engaging in any conversation. Ask yourself, will this feed my imagination with images that support my highest good, or will it deposit fearful, limiting, or destructive imagery into my mental environment? This simple pause transforms you from a passive recipient to an active curator of your imaginative content. Surround yourself with physical imagery that supports positive imagination. Artwork, photographs, or symbols that remind you of beauty, possibility, and spiritual truth. Your physical environment continuously feeds your imagination through visual input. So consciously choosing uplifting imagery helps maintain positive mental patterns even during challenging periods. The goal isn't to create an unrealistic bubble of artificial positivity, but rather to ensure that your imagination receives sufficient positive input to maintain its natural capacity for hope, creativity, and sacred vision. Like tending a garden, protecting your imagination requires both removing weeds and planting seeds. Clearing negative imagery while actively cultivating positive mental content. Chapter 7. Creative Visualization. Thomas Edison would sit in his workshop holding steel ball bearings in his hands while contemplating challenging problems. As he relaxed and began to drift towards sleep, the ball bearings would drop, waking him at the exact moment when his conscious mind released control and his deeper creative faculties engaged. In that liminal state between waking and sleeping, Edison would often receive the innovative solutions that made him one of history's most prolific inventors. He had discovered what mystics and manifestation practitioners have known for millennia: that imagination, properly directed, serves as sacred technology for bringing the unseen into visible form. Sacred imagination serves as a preview of coming attractions in your spiritual journey, allowing you to experience tomorrow's promises today through faith-filled visualization. This isn't wishful thinking or positive psychology, but recognition that the creative principle operating throughout the universe, the same force that spoke galaxies into existence, operates through consciousness, and consciousness expresses itself most powerfully through imagination. The science of creative visualization reveals why this practice produces measurable results. Neuroscience demonstrates that the brain cannot distinguish between vividly imagined experiences and actual physical experiences. When you visualize yourself achieving a goal, your neural pathways fire in patterns identical to those that would activate during actual achievement. This mental rehearsal literally rewires your brain, creating the neural infrastructure necessary for manifesting your visualized outcomes. Research in sports psychology shows that athletes who combine physical practice with mental visualization outperform those who rely on physical practice alone. Olympic swimmers who visualize perfect races improve their times more dramatically than those who only train in the pool. This occurs because visualization activates the same motor neurons involved in physical movement, essentially allowing athletes to practice perfectly in their minds before executing physically. The spiritual dimension of creative visualization operates on the principle that imagination serves as the interface between the realm of infinite possibility and the realm of concrete manifestation. When you visualize with clarity, emotional intensity, and unwavering faith, you're not merely hoping for positive outcomes. You're aligning your consciousness with creative forces that naturally respond to focused mental imagery. Effective manifestation through visualization requires understanding several key principles. First, clarity of vision matters more than intensity of desire. The universe responds more readily to specific, detailed mental images than to vague wishes or general hopes. Instead of visualizing more money, picture yourself confidently handling specific financial situations, paying bills with ease, making generous contributions, or enjoying particular experiences that abundance would provide. Second, emotional engagement amplifies visualization power exponentially. The feeling component of visualization, the joy, gratitude, peace, or excitement you experience while imagining your desired outcomes, serves as the energy that powers manifestation. Emotion literally means energy in motion, and the emotional intensity you bring to visualization determines how quickly and powerfully your mental images translate into physical experience. Third, consistency matters more than duration. Daily 5-minute visualization sessions produce better results than occasional hour-long sessions because consistent mental rehearsal gradually rewires your subconscious patterns and habitual thought processes. Like compound interest, regular visualization builds momentum over time, creating increasingly powerful manifestation effects. Begin your visualization practice by creating optimal conditions for inner focus. Find a quiet space where you won't be interrupted, sit comfortably with your spine erect, and take several deep breaths to center your attention. Close your eyes and allow your mind to settle into the gentle receptivity that characterizes the imagination's natural state. Start with end-result visualization rather than process visualization. Instead of trying to picture how your goals will manifest, focus on experiencing yourself already living in the fulfilled condition. If you're visualizing improved health, don't imagine the healing process. Imagine yourself feeling vibrant, energetic, and completely well. If you're visualizing career advancement, don't focus on job interviews or applications. Picture yourself confidently performing in your ideal role. Engage all your senses during visualization to create maximum neural activation and emotional resonance. If you're visualizing your ideal home, don't just see it. Feel the texture of the furniture, hear the sounds of the environment, smell the flowers in the garden, and taste the satisfaction of being exactly where you belong. Multisensory visualization creates richer neural pathways and more compelling emotional experiences. Include other people in your visualizations to address the social dimension of manifestation. Picture supportive friends celebrating your success, family members benefiting from your achievements, or colleagues appreciating your contributions. This social component helps your subconscious mind accept your visualized outcomes as realistic rather than fantastical. Address resistance and doubt directly rather than trying to suppress these natural responses. When skeptical thoughts arise during visualization, "This won't work," "I don't deserve this," or "This is impossible," acknowledge them gently and then return to your visualization with renewed focus. Resistance often indicates that your visualization is powerful enough to challenge existing limiting beliefs, which means it's working effectively. Transform doubt into curiosity by approaching visualization as an experiment rather than a test. Instead of demanding immediate proof that visualization works, maintain an attitude of open exploration. "I wonder what would happen if I consistently visualize this outcome." This curiosity-based approach reduces performance pressure and allows your imagination to work more naturally. Use bridge beliefs to span the gap between your current reality and your visualized outcomes. If your desired goal feels too distant from your present circumstances, create intermediate visualization scenarios that feel more believable. If you're currently struggling financially but visualizing abundant wealth, include intermediate images of gradually improving finances, unexpected opportunities, or developing money management skills. Align personal will with divine purpose by ensuring your visualizations serve not only your individual benefit, but also the greater good. The most powerful manifestations occur when personal desires align with universal principles of love, truth, and service. Before beginning any visualization practice, ask yourself, how would the fulfillment of this vision serve not only me, but also others? This alignment multiplies manifestation power by harmonizing personal will with cosmic intention. Practice gratitude-based visualization by imagining yourself expressing appreciation for your fulfilled desires. Picture yourself thanking divine providence for the opportunities, relationships, and resources that enabled your success. This grateful visualization creates positive emotional energy while acknowledging the spiritual dimension of manifestation. Develop visualization rituals that signal to your subconscious mind that you're entering sacred creative time. Light a candle, play soft music, or hold a meaningful object while visualizing. These physical anchors help deepen your imaginative focus and create consistency in your practice. End each visualization session with surrender and trust, releasing attachment to specific outcomes while maintaining faith in the process. The paradox of effective manifestation is that you must visualize with passionate clarity while simultaneously releasing desperate attachment to results. This balanced approach allows creative forces to work through you rather than against your anxiety or impatience. Chapter 8. Collective Consciousness. In 1986, a peculiar phenomenon swept through Japan's financial markets. Thousands of investors, with no direct communication between them, simultaneously began making nearly identical trading decisions. Market analysts later discovered that these decisions weren't based on shared information or coordinated strategy, but seemed to emerge from a collective intuitive response to underlying economic currents. This event illustrated what consciousness researchers call morphic resonance, the mysterious way that insights, behaviors, and even creative breakthroughs seem to spread through groups without direct communication. Just as we can be influenced by collective fear, we can participate in and contribute to collective sacred imagination. The same interconnectedness that allows anxiety and worry to spread through communities also enables shared vision to create powerful fields of possibility and transformation. When groups of people consistently visualize positive outcomes, they generate what could be called imaginative momentum that supports manifestation for all participants. Understanding herd imagination reveals how collective mental imagery shapes both individual experience and social reality. Most people remain unconscious of their participation in group visualization, automatically absorbing and reinforcing whatever mental images dominate their social environment. During economic downturns, collective imagery focuses on scarcity and limitation, creating a self-reinforcing cycle that extends and deepens financial challenges. During times of optimism, shared mental images of growth and opportunity help generate the confidence and cooperation necessary for collective prosperity. This collective imagination operates through what neuroscientists call mirror neurons, brain cells that activate both when we perform actions and when we observe others performing the same actions. These neurons enable us to literally share experiences with others, including imaginative experiences. When you're in the presence of someone who's visualizing positive outcomes with strong emotional intensity, your mirror neurons automatically begin firing in similar patterns, subtly influencing your own imaginative tendencies. The spiritual dimension of collective imagination connects to ancient understanding of humanity as a unified consciousness expressing itself through individual minds. Mystics throughout history have recognized that personal spiritual practice contributes to the awakening of collective consciousness, while collective spiritual activity supports individual development. Your personal visualization practice doesn't only benefit you, it adds constructive imagery to the collective mental environment, making it easier for others to access positive visualization. Conscious participation in collective visualization requires first becoming aware of the group mental patterns you're already unconsciously absorbing. Notice how your mood, expectations, and imaginative tendencies shift when you're around different groups of people. Some social environments naturally elevate your mental imagery toward possibility and hope, while others pull your imagination toward worry and limitation. This awareness allows you to make conscious choices about which collective imaginative fields you choose to enter and contribute to. Protect yourself from negative collective imagination by maintaining your own centered visualization practice, even while participating in group activities. Like a tuning fork that maintains its pure tone even in a noisy environment. Consistent personal practice and sacred imagination creates internal stability that prevents you from being overwhelmed by fearful or limiting group imagery. Create positive collective visualization by introducing constructive mental imagery into group conversations and activities. When friends discuss challenges, acknowledge their concerns while gently redirecting attention toward possible solutions and positive outcomes. Share inspiring stories that help others visualize overcoming difficulties. Ask questions that invite people to imagine positive possibilities rather than dwelling on problems. Organize intentional group visualization sessions where participants consciously combine their imaginative focus toward shared positive outcomes. These might involve visualizing community healing, environmental restoration, social harmony, or spiritual awakening. Group visualization sessions typically prove more powerful than individual practice because multiple minds focusing on identical imagery create what could be called imaginative amplification. Structure group visualization sessions by beginning with individual centering, then guiding participants through synchronized breathing and relaxation. Introduce the shared visualization theme clearly, allowing several minutes for participants to develop their own personal connection to the collective imagery. Include periods of silence for individual inner work alternating with gentle spoken guidance that helps maintain group focus. End group sessions with circle sharing where participants briefly describe their visualization experiences without trying to convince others or debate different perspectives. This sharing helps integrate the collective experience while honoring individual variations in imaginative expression. The goal isn't uniformity, but harmony. Different people contributing their unique gifts to a shared positive vision. Establish ongoing sacred imagination communities through regular meeting groups, online platforms, or informal networks of people committed to conscious participation in collective visualization. These communities provide mutual support, accountability, and amplified power for manifestation work. Members can share inspiration, discuss challenges, and celebrate manifestation successes together. Understand that your individual practice contributes to collective consciousness transformation even when you're practicing alone. Every time you choose to visualize love instead of fear, abundance instead of scarcity, or harmony instead of conflict, you're adding constructive imagery to the collective mental environment. Like dropping a pebble into still water, your personal visualization creates ripples that extend far beyond your individual awareness. Use global events and challenges as opportunities for contributing healing imagery to collective consciousness. When disasters occur, wars erupt, or social tensions arise, your personal practice of visualizing peace, healing, and resolution adds positive mental energy to situations that desperately need constructive rather than destructive imagery. This isn't naive optimism, but practical spiritual service, using your imaginative capacity to support collective healing rather than amplifying collective fear. Recognize that collective imagination operates across time as well as space. When you visualize positive outcomes for future generations, contribute to healing past traumas, or draw inspiration from historical examples of spiritual courage, you're participating in a collective imagination that transcends linear time. Your sacred imagination connects you to the wisdom of the past and the possibilities of the future, making you a conscious participant in humanity's ongoing spiritual evolution. The ultimate goal of collective imagination work isn't to manipulate outcomes or control others, but to become a conscious contributor to the quality of mental imagery available in the collective human experience. As more individuals learn to direct their imagination towards sacred rather than fearful possibilities, the collective mental environment gradually shifts toward greater wisdom, compassion, and creative potential for everyone. Chapter 9. Reframing Reality. A woman lost her job during an economic downturn and initially experienced the typical fear and discouragement that accompanies unexpected unemployment. However, as she processed the situation through the lens of sacred imagination, she began to see her job loss not as a crisis to survive, but as a divine delivery, an unexpected opportunity to pursue the counseling career she'd dreamed about for years, but never had the courage to attempt. 6 months later, she was enrolled in graduate school, supported by unemployment benefits and a part-time position that perfectly complemented her studies. The same external event that initially appeared devastating had become the catalyst for her greatest professional fulfillment. Sacred imagination allows us to reframe challenges as opportunities, seeing not crises to survive, but divine deliveries that showcase divine faithfulness and open new pathways for growth. This isn't positive thinking or denial of difficulty, but recognition that every experience contains multiple potential meanings, and the meaning we choose through our imaginative interpretation determines our experience of reality. Learning to recontextualize difficulties within a larger narrative requires understanding that your life story isn't just a random sequence of events, but an unfolding spiritual journey where apparent setbacks often serve as setups for greater advancement. This perspective doesn't minimize real pain or practical challenges, but places them within a framework of meaning that supports resilience, hope, and creative response rather than despair or victimhood. The process of recontextualization begins with identifying the automatic story your mind tells about challenging situations. Most people unconsciously interpret difficulties through narratives of injustice, inadequacy, or bad luck, stories that cast them as victims of circumstances beyond their control. While these interpretations might contain elements of truth, they typically generate helplessness and despair rather than empowerment and creative action. Replace victim narratives with hero narratives by viewing challenges as calls to adventure rather than punishments to endure. In classic hero mythology, the protagonist always faces obstacles that initially appear overwhelming but ultimately serve to develop the strength, wisdom, and skills necessary for fulfilling their deeper purpose. Your difficulties might be serving the same function, calling forth capabilities and resources you never knew you possessed. Develop the practice of story editing by consciously rewriting the meaning of challenging events while they're still unfolding. Instead of automatically assuming that setbacks represent failure or that obstacles indicate you're on the wrong path, consider alternative interpretations. This delay is protecting me from something I can't yet see, or this challenge is developing skills I'll need for my next opportunity, or this apparent problem contains a hidden gift I haven't yet discovered. Techniques for seeing challenges as deliveries involve shifting from asking, "Why is this happening to me?" to asking, "What is this delivering to me?" Or "How is this serving my highest good?" This reframe activates creative thinking rather than self-pity, encouraging you to look for benefits, lessons, or opportunities embedded within difficult circumstances. Create delivery questions that help uncover the hidden gifts within challenges. What strength is this situation developing in me? What would I never have learned without this experience? How might this apparent setback position me for future opportunities? What outdated patterns or relationships is this challenge helping me release? These questions don't deny the reality of difficulty, but help you extract maximum value from unavoidable experiences. Practice perspective shifting by imagining how you will view your current challenges from the vantage point of future success. Often, difficulties that feel overwhelming in the moment appear as necessary stepping stones when viewed from the perspective of later achievements. Olympic athletes frequently describe their most grueling training periods as the foundation for their eventual victories. Successful entrepreneurs often credit their early failures with providing the lessons essential for later breakthroughs. Build a testimony pantry of past victories to feed future faith by maintaining a written record of times when apparent disasters transformed into unexpected blessings. Include situations where you worried unnecessarily, challenges that led to growth, and doors that closed only to open better opportunities. Review these testimonies regularly, especially during current difficulties, to remind yourself that divine faithfulness has consistently transformed your challenges into deliveries. Document not only external victories, but internal growth achieved through difficult experiences. Record how challenges develop your compassion, patience, courage, or wisdom. Note relationships that deepened through shared struggles, skills that emerged under pressure, or self-knowledge that arose through testing. This internal testimony often proves even more valuable than external success stories because it demonstrates that every experience contributes to your spiritual development regardless of external outcomes. Use reframing techniques during acute stress by immediately asking, "How might this serve my highest good?" when challenges first arise. This doesn't mean suppressing natural emotional responses or pretending difficulties don't matter, but rather engaging your creative imagination to look for constructive possibilities even within unwanted circumstances. The neurological basis for perceptual transformation involves understanding that your brain literally rewires itself based on habitual thought patterns. Neural pathways that fire together wire together. So consistently interpreting challenges through frames of opportunity and growth literally reshapes your brain to perceive possibilities more readily than problems. This neuroplasticity means that reframing practice becomes increasingly natural and automatic over time. Develop rapid reframing skills through daily practice with minor inconveniences before applying these techniques to major challenges. When traffic delays your commute, practice seeing the delay as providing time for reflection or protecting you from an accident you'll never know about. When technology malfunctions, view it as an opportunity to develop patience or to connect with people instead of devices. These small reframing exercises build the mental muscles necessary for handling larger challenges with grace and creativity. Create reframing rituals that help shift your perspective during difficult periods. Light a candle and spend time visualizing your current challenge transforming into unexpected blessing. Write in a journal about potential gifts hidden within your difficulties. Take walks in nature while contemplating how natural cycles of seasons mirror the rhythms of challenge and renewal in human experience. These rituals activate sacred imagination and help maintain constructive perspective during testing times. Remember that reframing doesn't require immediate emotional transformation or artificial positivity. You can intellectually choose to view challenges as deliveries while still feeling natural disappointment, fear, or grief about difficult circumstances. The reframing process gradually influences your emotional responses as your imagination becomes increasingly aligned with constructive rather than destructive interpretations of experience. The ultimate goal of reframing practice is developing unshakable faith in the goodness of life. Not naive optimism that denies real difficulties, but mature confidence that every experience serves your spiritual development and ultimate well-being when viewed from the perspective of divine love and wisdom. Chapter 10. Living from Vision. A successful architect was once asked how he designed buildings that seemed to perfectly serve their users' needs decades after construction. His answer revealed the secret of living from vision. "I don't design buildings," he said. "I listen for the building that wants to exist in that space. Then I help it emerge into physical form." This architect had learned to align his professional activities with a deeper creative intelligence, allowing his work to serve purposes larger than his personal ambitions while achieving greater success than ego-driven effort could produce. The ultimate goal of sacred imagination isn't occasional practice, but a transformed way of being in the world, seeing with spiritual eyes while navigating physical reality. Living from vision means organizing your daily life around the guidance received through your mind's eye rather than merely reacting to external circumstances or following conventional expectations. This transformed way of living requires integrating three essential elements: maintaining inner vision clarity, translating vision into practical action, and trusting divine timing even when external progress seems slow. These elements work together to create what could be called embodied imagination, sacred vision that expresses itself through concrete daily choices and activities. Practices for maintaining sacred vision amid mundane activities begin with developing the capacity to hold dual awareness, remaining connected to your inner vision while fully engaging with practical responsibilities. This doesn't mean walking around in a mystical trance, but rather maintaining gentle awareness of your deeper purpose and divine guidance, even during routine tasks. Create vision anchors throughout your daily environment, symbols, images, or phrases that remind you of your sacred vision and divine purpose. These might include meaningful artwork in your workspace, inspirational quotes on your phone, or small objects that represent your spiritual goals. Vision anchors help maintain connection to sacred imagination even during busy or stressful periods. Develop transitional rituals that help you reconnect with sacred vision between different activities throughout the day. Before important meetings, spend a moment visualizing yourself guided by divine wisdom. Before difficult conversations, imagine yourself surrounded by divine love and protection. Before beginning creative work, invite divine inspiration to flow through your efforts. These brief rituals maintain the connection between inner vision and outer action. Practice sacred seeing in everyday moments by looking for divine presence and purpose within ordinary circumstances. Instead of viewing your commute as lost time, use it for grateful reflection or visualization practice. Instead of seeing household chores as drudgery, approach them as acts of loving service or meditative practice. This sacred seeing transforms mundane activities into opportunities for spiritual connection and practice. Use work and relationships as vehicles for expressing sacred imagination rather than obstacles to spiritual development. Instead of compartmentalizing spiritual practice into separate time periods, integrate sacred vision into your professional activities, family interactions, and community involvement. Ask yourself regularly, how can my sacred vision express itself through this situation? Or, how can I serve divine purposes through this relationship or responsibility? Create daily rituals that reinforce imagination throughout the day by establishing regular practices that activate and strengthen your sacred vision. Begin each morning with visualization and intention setting. Include brief meditation or prayer periods throughout the day. End each evening with grateful reflection and vision renewal. These rituals create a rhythmic connection to sacred imagination that supports consistent spiritual awareness. Balance practical action with visionary perspective by understanding that sacred imagination requires both inner receptivity and outer expression. Vision without action remains fantasy, while action without vision becomes mere activity. Living from vision means allowing inner guidance to inform practical decisions while taking concrete steps to manifest spiritual inspiration in the physical world. Develop discernment about when to wait for clearer guidance and when to move forward with incomplete information. Sacred imagination doesn't always provide detailed blueprints for action. Sometimes it offers only the next step or general direction. Learning to act on partial guidance while remaining open to course corrections helps you live from vision without becoming paralyzed by demands for complete certainty. Trust divine timing by understanding that external manifestation of your sacred vision might unfold differently than your ego prefers. Divine timing considers factors beyond your individual awareness, the readiness of other people involved, the availability of resources, the alignment of circumstances, and your own spiritual preparation for receiving what you've envisioned. Patience becomes a spiritual practice that allows divine intelligence to orchestrate optimal outcomes. Use setbacks and delays as opportunities to deepen rather than abandon your sacred vision. When external progress seems slow, turn attention to internal development, strengthening your visualization skills, clarifying your spiritual motivations, or releasing ego attachments that might be interfering with divine flow. These periods of apparent delay often prove essential for preparing you to handle the full manifestation of your vision with wisdom and grace. Become a transmitter of sacred imagery to others by sharing your vision in ways that inspire and uplift those around you. This doesn't mean proselytizing or forcing your perspective on others, but rather living so authentically from your sacred vision that others naturally feel encouraged to explore their own deeper purpose and spiritual potential. Share your vision through your presence rather than through words alone. People sense authenticity and spiritual connection more readily than they respond to explanations or arguments. When you live genuinely from sacred imagination, your peace, joy, creativity, and love naturally inspire others to seek similar spiritual connection in their own lives. Create opportunities for others to experience their own sacred imagination through group activities, creative projects, or service initiatives that engage people's higher aspirations and spiritual potential. Leading visualization sessions, organizing community service projects, or simply asking questions that invite deeper reflection can help others discover their own capacity for sacred vision. Model the integration of spiritual vision with practical responsibility by demonstrating that living from sacred imagination enhances rather than diminishes your effectiveness in worldly activities. Show through your example that spiritual practice supports better decision-making, more creative problem-solving, and more harmonious relationships rather than creating escape from practical life. Remember that living from vision is a gradual development rather than a sudden transformation. Be patient with yourself as you learn to integrate sacred imagination into daily life. Celebrate small victories and learn from apparent failures. Trust that consistent practice gradually aligns your entire life with spiritual truth and divine purpose. The ultimate expression of living from vision occurs when the distinction between spiritual practice and daily life dissolves. When every moment becomes an opportunity for sacred imagination to express itself through your thoughts, words, and actions. This integrated way of living transforms you into a conscious participant in divine creativity, contributing to the healing and evolution of human consciousness through your very presence in the world. The journey of unlocking your mind's eye represents both an ancient rediscovery and a revolutionary awakening. A return to humanity's original capacity for co-creation with divine intelligence, combined with fresh understanding of how consciousness shapes reality. As you continue practicing the techniques shared throughout this audiobook, you'll find that sacred imagination gradually transforms from something you do into something you are, reshaping your perception, your actions, and ultimately your entire experience of life. Remember that imagination serves as the cornerstone of all creation, the primary mechanism through which the invisible realm of possibility becomes visible reality. Every achievement in human history, from artistic masterpieces to scientific breakthroughs to spiritual awakenings, first emerged as imaginative vision in someone's mind's eye before manifesting in physical form. By consciously directing this faculty towards spiritual truth and divine possibility, you participate in humanity's ongoing evolution while reshaping your personal experience. The choice before you remains elegantly simple yet profoundly consequential. Will your imagination be captured by fear and limitation, or will it be anchored in sacred possibility and divine faithfulness? Will you allow your mind's eye to be filled with the world's projections of lack, danger, and despair, or will you consciously cultivate inner vision aligned with love, abundance, and hope? This choice determines not only your individual experience, but also your contribution to the collective consciousness of humanity. The techniques you've learned, distinguishing sacred imagination from fantasy, building visualization skills, protecting your mental environment, practicing creative manifestation, participating in collective vision, reframing challenges as opportunities, and integrating spiritual sight into daily life, provide a comprehensive framework for developing your mind's eye as a reliable instrument of spiritual perception and creative manifestation. Begin today with even the simplest practices. Trust the process of gradual strengthening rather than demanding immediate dramatic results. Guard your imagination diet by choosing consciously what mental imagery you consume through media, conversations, and entertainment. Practice sacred seeing in everyday moments by looking for divine presence and purpose within ordinary circumstances. Watch with amazement as the world around you begins to reflect the transformation happening within your consciousness. Your sacred imagination represents one of the most precious gifts you possess, a direct connection to divine creativity and unlimited possibility. Like any gift, it grows stronger through use and more refined through conscious development. Every moment offers a fresh opportunity to exercise this capacity, to see beyond current circumstances toward divine potential, and to participate consciously in the ongoing creation of reality through the power of focused spiritual vision. The path ahead stretches as far as your imagination can reach, limited only by your willingness to see beyond current appearances toward the spiritual truth that underlies all existence. May your inner vision remain clear, your imagination sacred, and your heart open to the infinite possibilities that await your creative participation in divine love's unfolding story. Thank you for joining us on this transformative journey into the sacred imagination. If you found value in this audiobook and feel inspired to continue developing your mind's eye, please subscribe to Audiobook's library for more content designed to awaken your highest spiritual potential and support your ongoing growth in consciousness. Until next time, may your inner vision remain clear, your imagination sacred, and your heart open to the infinite creative possibilities that await your conscious participation. Remember that every moment offers a fresh opportunity to see with spiritual eyes and to contribute your unique gifts to the healing and awakening of human consciousness. Blessings on your journey, and thank you for allowing us to be part of your spiritual adventure into the unlimited creative potential of the awakened mind's eye.